Australia. Her name is Gladys Berejiklian.
Of New South Wales, this is?
New South
Yeah.
Wales, yes.
Yeah.
So she's in charge down there, and she's ruling with an iron fist, much like her comrade, Chairman Dan Andrews, at the People's Republic of the state of Victoria, just next door. But listen to what she says here, and we'll comment on it.
The good news is we're picking up extra cases, not just with those who have symptoms, but through the testing we're doing of people working and going out of the area has picked up a number of cases for people who aren't symptomatic. And that is a really important message. If you're living in a community that has a lot of cases, even if you don't have symptoms, don't assume you don't have the virus. Because in communities where the virus is lurking, where the virus is circulating, you could have the virus, not know it, and unfortunately take it home and give it to your loved ones. We don't want to see that distress caused in families and your closest people. So please make sure that you listen to our messages regarding testing.
So Patrick, I'm particularly worried now because the virus is clearly lurking.
She said it, didn't
yes,
she? Lurking.
Did. Lurking, yeah.
Lurking in Australia, Mike. So what was the thing that stuck out about that brief statement?
Asymptomatic spread. They're still banging this drum as hard as they possibly can, despite the fact that there's no such thing.
So if you see people that aren't sick in Australia that are perfectly healthy, you should be very afraid because they could be carrying the virus. So again, must lock down, stay at home forever. Australia is the beta testing ground for all great globalist policies, and they've really proven their mettle during the global pandemic and continue to be leading the world in overreactions. Mike, let's take a look at their, we have another clip.
Yes, we do. Dr.
Yes.
Kerry Chant.
Okay, so standing behind the Premier was her chief medical officer there in New South Wales, Dr. Kerry Chant. She's saying, Mike, not only that, you need to avoid talking to people as well. Listen to this.
Whilst it is in human nature to engage in conversation with others, to be friendly, unfortunately, this is not the time to do that. So even if you run into your next door neighbour in the shopping centre, in the Coles, whilst you're at Coles or Woolworths or Aldi or any other grocery shop, don't start up a conversation. Now is the time for minimising your interactions with others. Even if you've got a mask, do not think that affords total protection. We want to be absolutely sure that as we go about our daily lives, we do not come into contact with anyone else that would pose a risk.
That's Dr. Kerry Chant. She's laying the law down, Mike. Don't come into contact with anyone that might pose a risk, which could be anybody.
Anybody, because they could be asymptomatic, and therefore you've got to be afraid of them. Be afraid. Be afraid.
This is the sort of tripe they're pushing down in Australia. It leaves us pretty much speechless, Mike.
Yes.
So they're rerunning the old script, but doing it with more zest and
you could say it's more extreme. So what we hear from the mainstream press and the government is that they're very concerned about extremism in countries. People are becoming more extreme, but actually the largest extremism example we can find is within government itself.
Yeah,
right around the world.
Well, they've been doing that internationally for years, Mike, and now they're starting to do it to their own populations with much more intensity. So let's look at the New South Wales Health Department here, just to give you some context. This is from July 18th, but this is the numbers we're talking about here, Mike, for Australia and New South Wales. New South Wales recorded 105 new locally acquired cases, PCR positive cases, probably likely. So are these real cases? Nobody knows. Only 105 in 24 hours to 8 p.m. last night. So they're micromanaging the data on everything, right?
But the key point here is, Patrick, because people in the Northern Hemisphere sometimes forget that this is their winter.
Sure.
We're in the middle of their winter at the moment, 105 cases.
But a PCR positive tests, yeah.
So where is the pandemic in New South Wales?
Well, nobody knows because nobody's actually dying from it. So look at this, the total number of cases in New South Wales since the beginning of the pandemic, they're keeping a running total from February or March to 2020, is 6,753. Mind you, the population of Sydney on its own is roughly about Greater Sydney, 4.5 million, 5 million or something like that. So, I mean, this is for the last 2 years, these numbers. So these are positive tests, Mike, for the last 2 years. I mean, there's nothing going on in Australia but a total government fascist takeover by the looks of it. I mean, they're really loving it and hamming it up. Question is how long till the people are going to push back in dramatic fashion.
Well, what we're seeing in Australia, of course, is this zero COVID policy, and this is the policy which is gradually coming into European countries as well. The UK, I've no doubt, is going to head in that direction too. So here is a report here. Zero COVID economies like Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia risk being left behind. The Economist Intelligence Unit said Asia Pacific's coronavirus elimination strategies are likely to undercut rather than support economic activity. So they're saying that there's a risk that zero COVID policies will persist and border reopening will not occur in any meaningful sense in 2021, 2022. The emergence of COVID-19 variants that are resistant to current vaccines would quickly persuade zero COVID countries to retain their current approach. And in this context, the strategy may even become more favored in other countries. And so they went on to say that although, their claim, although zero COVID strategies had saved lives and delivered economic benefits in the short term, they said that years of border closures would drive economies towards self-sufficiency and would have powerful effects, including potentially straining international relations. Voters in zero COVID countries have become accustomed to minimal COVID-19 cases and may also perceive advantages from fewer tourists and fewer migrants competing for jobs. Well, really, is the Australian economy, which relies quite heavily on tourism, are they going to be happy to continue those policies on a long-term basis? I don't think so. But the key point here is these economies are suffering as a result of these policies, which we might say is the policy for those economies to suffer, because as we're just heading into the COP26 now, this is the Great Reset.
This is the strategy is to tank the economy, and so those who have access to finance, who have access to the open windows of the Federal Reserve and other central banks, they're milking the system for every last bit of money and equity, and they're devaluing these current currencies in the process, further exacerbating the crisis itself, and then just printing money, quantitative easing like it's going out of style, to create such an economic calamity that they're going to be baying for a solution. And what is that solution? Central bank digitized currency with all the other little caveats to it that we mentioned in previous programs. And that is one of the fulcrum of the Great Reset agenda. And it's all predicated on the idea, this is their sales pitch, that we need to do this to save the climate of the planet.
So let's talk about saving the climate of the planet. It's 100 days until the UN Climate Change Conference in the UK 2021, the COP26. This is scheduled to take place from the 1st to the 12th of November in Glasgow in the Scottish Events Campus. And it's going to have an opening ceremony on the 31st of October. 30,000 people from 200 countries are going to attend this. So there's certainly not going to be any lockdown around that unless that changes. But anyway, 30,000 people. You'll be glad to know, Patrick, though, they are offering free vaccination to anybody that wants to go to it. But you don't have to be vaccinated, although you're going to be very much encouraged to be vaccinated. And the UK government is providing free vaccines for any delegate that wants to go.
That's very nice of them.
Yes. So governments are expected to submit new what are called nationally determined contributions to make sure that global warming stays below 2 degrees. Before this, so far, 62 countries and the European Union have not done that. But the main focus of this, of course, is going to be climate finance. But they've released an agenda that's I appreciate the text is very small on that, but this is their graphic. So they're going to have a World Leaders Summit. They've got a big section on finance, a big section on energy. Of course, energy, well, nobody's building the energy infrastructure in order to pursue the policies that they're heading for. They're going to be looking at youth and public empowerment and looking at adaptation, loss and damage. Gender is a big climate issue, Patrick. I'm sure you didn't know that, but it is.
Of course it is, because we need to focus on the role of gender in controlling the Earth's temperature.
Yes, Transport, of course, that goes with energy, and cities, regions, and built environment, because of course the city's agenda is extremely important to the climate as well. Well, actually, perhaps it is, because of course the more urbanization you have, the more localized heating you might have, but that's not because of carbon dioxide, that's because of radiation. But anyway, that's a whole other
And
issue.
Chris Whitty said it's not good to be out in the countryside, Mike, because you don't have access to healthcare. Bad health outcomes if you're on the beach and in the beautiful coastal areas.
Yes.
So all the people who retire there, Chris Whitty is telling you, turn around, move back into the center of your cities, get back into those council estates, and get on those waiting lists in the city for healthcare. You don't want to be on the waiting lists in the rural areas because that's bad health outcomes.
Indeed. So 100 days to go. UK Column, of course, will be bringing you all the best information possible with respect to COP26. I'm sure it's going to be an extremely exciting event.
Indeed.
Indeed.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
Are you going?
I don't know.
Cancel the.
I have to see whether we can get accreditation.
When, I think, yeah, maybe we
Maybe
might.
we can. Yeah.
We might be. We might be.
Yes.
I don't think we're going to get accreditation for some reason. I don't know.
I don't see
I'd be
why not
surprised.
these days. But anyway, what's Joe up to?
Well, look at old Joe Biden. So what's going on internationally here, stirring trouble internationally. There he is. He's looking a little bit confused. This is a photoshopped image, by the way. He doesn't look that young. But he's done a U-turn, Mike, on what? The Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
No, he can't have, because he hates the Russians.
Well, yeah, because it's it's all about the Russians with the Democrats. So where does this leave that whole narrative of Donald Trump was a Russian agent? I mean, Trump was hard on Nord Stream 2, sanctioned it, was blackmailing the Germans to dump LNG on the German market just so the Russians couldn't finish this pipeline here. So, maybe some control there from Vlad over Biden. What do you think? Some compromise, maybe?
Some more Russian interference in U.S. politics? Is that what's going
Is
on?
Joe being blackmailed by the Russians? I don't know. Who knows? But let's take a look at the story itself here. U.S. won't block completion of Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipelines. This is massive, okay? This is a big U-turn from U.S. policy, really from the Obama administration here. So Biden waives U.S. sanctions on Russian pipelines. So that's going ahead. The problem with this story, Mike, is it's going to cause confusion. We're trying to figure out, how did this even come to be? The Greens are not going to like this. In particular, one person is really not going to like this, is Greta Thunberg. And so she's very, very angry at Joe Biden. She won't forgive him for it. But so what's Biden doing? You know what he's doing here, Mike? Because by waving this pipeline through, it kills the U.S. LNG market. So for the Greens in America, for the radical wing of the Democratic Party, this is great. He just killed the fracking industry.
Yes.
So it's give and take in this game. But so what's going to happen here with Joe, though? The Greens in Europe are not going to like this, Mike. They're not going to like this. What are they going to do? So we know, our sources tell us that Extinction Rebellion is planning a German invasion as a result, and they're going to be sending in this crack squad of I don't know what they are, Mike, penguins or ravens, or whatever. They deployed these to the G7 in Cornwall. You can see they came on shore, Mike, and they just wreaked havoc amongst Cornwall there in Carbis Bay. So these are planned actions by the opposition, Mike. And if it gets really serious, Extinction Rebellion will be deploying this platoon. And these are the ones you got to be afraid of. These are the wild red banshees of XR. And so if they deploy this, Angela Merkel is going to have her hands full.
Yes.
There. So I think that they might even do a U-turn on Biden's U-turn. Imagine that, a full 360-degree turn. We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. Well, look, we will leave it there for today. Patrick, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for joining us.
And have a great weekend. If you're heading to London or wherever you are, there's a lot of events happening in local areas. So we hope it's going to be a great day. Might not be as sunny and hot as it has been this week, but nonetheless, there's going to be a great opportunity for people to get together and to share each other's company and experiences.
Yeah.
And looking forward to another great week next week.
Yes, indeed. We will be back at 1 p.m. as usual on Monday. As Patrick says, have a great weekend, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.